Hello everyone and welcome to Walking Through the Bible. In the last lesson we found that we have advanced forward in time about 58 years. The temple was rebuilt during the days of Darius. Darius is now dead and so is his successor Xerxes. Artaxerxes is now ruler of Persia and he allowed a second set of Jews to return to Judea. This set was led by Ezra, the priest and scribe. In today's lesson though, we learn that Artaxerxes sent Ezra back with a mission. What was that mission? Let's find out. So if you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Ezra chapter 7. We're going to be reading from verses 11 to 20. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Ezra chapter 7, beginning at verse 11. This is a copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave Ezra the priest, the scribe, expert in the words of the commandments of the Lord, and of his statutes to Israel. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Ezra the priest, a scribe of the law of God of heaven, perfect peace, and so forth. I issue a decree that all those of the peoples of Israel and the priests and Levites in my realm who volunteer to go up to Jerusalem may go with you. And whereas you are being sent by the king and his 7 counselors to inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem with regard to the law of your God, which is in your hand. And whereas you are to carry the silver and gold which the king and his counselors have freely offered to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem. And whereas all the silver and gold that you may find in all the province of Babylon, along with the freewill offering of the people and the priests, are to be freely offered for the house of their God in Jerusalem. Now therefore, be careful to buy with this money bulls, rams, and lambs with their grain offerings and their drink offerings, and offer them on the altar of the house of your God in Jerusalem. And whatever seems good to you and your brethren to do with the rest of the silver and the gold, do it according to the will of your God. Also, the articles that are given to you for the service of the house of your God, deliver in full before the God of Jerusalem. And whatever more may be needed for the house of your God, which you may have occasion to provide, pay for it from the king's treasury. When it comes to pagan kings, we often assume from Scripture that none of them have any respect for Jehovah. They're idolaters who become hostile to God and therefore persecute those who worship him. And yes, we have seen some of that attitude in pagan kings. But let's not assume that that's always the case. The Persian kings like Cyrus, Darius the Great, Xerxes and Esther, and Artaxerxes here in Ezra are at least were tolerant of the worship of Jehovah, and many even offered sacrifices to him. Now this doesn't mean that all of these people abandoned their idolatry, though some might have. It just means that they weren't openly hostile to the Jewish worship. They condoned it. Here in chapter 7, though, we find that Artaxerxes didn't simply send Ezra back because he was a Jew and was being kind. He had a mission for Ezra to perform that he decreed in a letter. The first task was to inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem with regard to the law of your God, which Artaxerxes confirms is in his hand, meaning that Ezra had a copy of it. Now by this, we're not to assume that what Artaxerxes was meaning was for Ezra to ensure that the people were following the law, for what concern is that to the Persians? Rather, it was to see how the people were doing. Were they facing opposition? Were they prospering? Did they have any needs? Along with Ezra was sent Artaxerxes' 7 counselors, which would provide Artaxerxes with such a report. This shows us that Artaxerxes was concerned with the condition of Ezra's people. The letter, though, also provided Ezra with authority. If you recall back to Exodus, when Moses tried, when he was younger, to help the Hebrews who were being oppressed, their response was basically, "Who died and made you king and judge over us?" It wouldn't be until Moses returned from Midian that he would lead Israel out of bondage and become a ruler and a judge over them. If Ezra, a Jew, simply arrived from Persia and started commenting on the religious practices of the Jews, or if he demanded changes, the Jews in Judea might have said the same thing. Ezra, by virtue of him being a priest, would have possessed this authority by God, but having authority given by the earthly ruler was good to have as well. But there was another mission given to Ezra by Artaxerxes, which was he was to take the money that was being provided by the king's household in order to purchase animals so that a free will offering could be offered to God on their behalf. Again, whether or not Artaxerxes recognized Jehovah as the only God or not, he did recognize that he was at least a true God, one who acted among his people. And so if he could act among his people, perhaps he could also act for the Persians too. Now, of course, we know that for that to happen, the people would have to abandon their idolatry. But what Artaxerxes was doing here was closer than many of the idolaters get. We'll leave up to God as to whether Artaxerxes got all the way or not. Ezra was also given authority as to what to do with the leftover money from the king that didn't purchase sacrifices. They were to do whatever seemed good to them according to the will of God, which included purchasing whatever was needed for the house of God. We'll see later on down in the chapter more clearly what that residue was used for. What Artaxerxes did here, though, teaches us a principle of authority. The king was giving money to Ezra, but he restricted Ezra to spend it according to his instructions, to purchase animals for sacrifice. But as is the case with any purchase, there is going to be some leftover money. What to do with that extra money? Would we be allowed to spend it? Absent any authority, the answer would be no. We would need to return it to the one who gave it. However, if they give us general authority to do what we think is best within certain parameters, then we have generic authority on how to spend it. When it comes to the money collected by the church, God has set some parameters on how this money is to be spent. Some of those are specific parameters, and some are generic. But we must spend that money within those parameters. If we go outside those parameters, then we are doing so without authority, which would be wrong. Would Artaxerxes have been pleased with Ezra had Ezra chosen to spend his money without authority? Certainly not. Why should we expect any different with the money that we give to God for the work of the church? Getting back to Ezra now, there is more to Artaxerxes' letter than what we have time to cover today. So we'll conclude chapter 7, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Ezra chapter 7, verses 21 to 28, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. We thank you for watching Walking Through the Bible today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. But if you like this video, we ask that you consider subscribing to our channel so you won't miss out on other videos in our series, as well as share this video among your friends so that the saving message of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.